with Ambassador Guilherme Patriota, who is the chair of the government group of experts that is working on negotiating responsible norms of behavior in cyberspace. Ambassador Patriota, thank you very much for coming to our podcast, and I would like to talk today about the meeting that happened this week at the United Nations offices here in Geneva of the government group of experts.
Thank you very much, Maya, for inviting me. As you know, this is a process that has started in 2004. This is the group of governmental experts in its sixth edition, so it's the sixth time we have a group. Out of the 5 previous groups, 3 managed to produce an agreed outcome at the end. They meet for about 2 years, and then the outcome is an agreed report containing the views of members and recommendations. This goes back to the UN. It goes to the first committee of the UN, which is a committee on disarmament, deals with peace and security, and then it goes to the General Assembly for all UN members to express their views on whatever it is that the group is capable to agree on. This is an important issue. Cyberspace is now becoming an arena for concern in terms of implications to peace and security. There is concern that new technologies are being developed that could represent new offensive capabilities of countries. They can be a means to project power in the cyberspace. And all this needs discussions, it needs dialogue. There's a perception that we need to start building a new understanding to ensure peace and to make sure that these new capabilities do not destabilize the world order. So that's more or less the agenda. This week, it's 1 week of discussions. We are 25 members designated by member states of the UN, but we're acting in our capacity as experts. And so we have to discuss and see if we can improve on the last report that was adopted by consensus in 2015.
There was no report in 2017. That there is a report that will be coming up in 2021. Is that right?
That's right. As I mentioned, out of the 5 previous GGEs, only 3 agreed on a report. The one on 2010, the one on 2013, and the one on 2015. 2017, the work of the group of experts ended in disagreement. There was no report.
So no report was produced then, but now it is looking like...
You can say it was, let's say, it was, in terms of negotiations, it had no outcome. Some people would say it was a failure. Of course, it's always...
That's a pause.
It's always important to have the process and to have the dialogue. But on that occasion, members could not come to an agreement. So in 2018, there was no process. So the discussion on cybersecurity in the context of international peace and security, in 2018, there was nothing, no process in the UN. At the end of 2018, then we came back to the issue, and there was 2 processes all of a sudden appeared because there was one resolution sponsored by the United States and another resolution sponsored originally by Russia. Both resolutions could not be merged. In the end, they were both adopted. And we have now 2 processes. So 2018, no process, now 2 processes running in parallel. I chair the GGE. I'm from Brazil.
The government group of experts,
the government group
comprised of 25 country members.
Yeah.
Why 25 and not 20 or 35?
Well, that's an evolving mechanism in the UN. These groups of experts, they function in a non-public manner. Members are acting in capacity as experts, so they're not necessarily committed to presenting formal official positions of countries. The meetings are confidential in nature. The documents and ideas circulated during the meeting remain within the strict confines of our discussions, and the only thing that is public is an agreement if we reach one. So
which is the report.
Which is the final report. So it's either there's a final report or there's nothing. So 4 one-week sessions during 2 years, and we report back. And all this effort, hopefully, will lead us to a new relevant outcome, a new layer of agreement between these 25 members. Of course, the GGE works like that because it seeks to make progress on issues that are very sensitive and difficult to address. Some new issues, for example, cyberspace. Another GGE that I chaired was the one on preventing an arms race in outer space. So you see, all these areas are areas where new technology is making a big impact in terms of its consequence to peace and security. And it's, of course, easier to try to find agreement in these new, very sensitive areas if you have a smaller number of countries in an environment where they can speak freely, where their opinions don't necessarily commit their governments,
or will be made public.
Or will be made public. So this is
to express their opinions. And also there are areas of great sensitivity, too, in terms of national security for the country members involved, right?
Usually the P5 are always members of all GGEs. So the permanent members of the Security Council are always there represented. And then the others, it's the Secretary General of the UN who receives the mandate to create the group. And so he has to create it with adequate, balanced geographical representation. So in addition to the permanent members of the Security Council, he invites and composes the group with representatives from the different regions of the UN to get a balanced representation.
So how were the discussions this week? Did you find that there were greater convergence or desire to create, to find common ground in the discussions?
Well, it's the second session out of 4. In the first, it was the first round to see where we are at. So countries made a lot of general statements and expressed their views. Someone repeated views that they had presented before. This is an area where positions sometimes don't really evolve as rapidly as the technologies do, so you have to deal with that. This time around, the discussions were more focused because we laid out concrete elements for decision-making throughout the different parts of the agenda. So the agenda has a general component, which is an overview of what's going on, what are the developments of concern in terms of new threats, emerging threats due to the pervasiveness of cyberspace, because everything today relies on the cyberspace. And if someone has the capacity to commit malicious acts that will disrupt critical infrastructures of countries, that can be perceived as an attack on a state, and it can lead to conflict. So the idea is to have some rules of what is the responsible behavior of states that we would like to see happen, that we would like to see all states following, so that it would reduce the chance of misinterpretation, conflict, and ultimately perhaps even war.
And the existing conventions, Geneva Conventions and international humanitarian law, do they play a role? Because we can look up to those normative frameworks already, right? Or are we looking forward into something else, that we have to develop a normative framework that addresses issues of cybersecurity, peace and security in cyberspace?
Well, they have played a role historically, a fundamental role in the conventional arena, the arena of conventional weapons, let's say. and conventional warfare and conventional conflict. Of course, international law, international humanitarian law, the international law of human rights, they have all played key roles. Now the question is, how do these bodies of law apply in the cyberspace?